Good evening. Welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. Tonight I am rejoined by the gentleman who I have come to refer to as Mr. Salty Mouth, Rich Frascone.
That's not the truth. But once in a while, you know, it's like anything else, things slip out.
Now, as I recall, the last time you were on, or the first time you were on, what I had to do was I had to take the soup bowls, and I started off the show, and I had those. You remember that, don't you?
I do.
And you do recall how during the show you used a few choice words that apparently are allowable on television, but you did use them. You were a bit salty in the mouth, and it was okay because you had a lot of good things to say. Now, what's this T-shirt all about? This Occupy Danbury.
Occupy? I thought it said Occupuppy.
So Occupy. And we have the back of the shirt up here, which is my shirt. On the back it says, "We are the 99%. And folks, you may have heard a little bit about Occupy Wall Street, which is going on. It's a bit in hibernation for the wintertime because, quite frankly, it's colder than hell in New York and a lot of other places. So we're keeping it going in a little bit less, a little more subdued fashion down there in Manhattan, and we'll be back in full throttle in the spring. But tell us about what's been going on down there up until now.
Yeah, well, you know, to me, the whole idea behind Occupy.
Yeah.
And, you know, because, you know, a lot of people, it conjures up some, especially if you watch Fox News, conjures up some bad thoughts. But really, you know, the purpose and the reason behind why we're doing what we're doing is really to raise people's awareness. Hey,
well,
listen,
everybody knows everything about what's important nowadays. They know who won American Idol last week. I don't know, but apparently a lot of America seems to know the important things in life. They know that Justin Bieber is dating, I don't know, somebody, I guess, or male, female, I don't know. No, but they know the important stuff. They know that Amy Winehouse died.
That's true.
That's the biggest story of the year. Never mind the fact that people are going to actually lose come January 1st. People are going to lose on a modest salary. You're probably going to lose about $20 a week out of their paycheck, which they really, in fact, very much need. Why are they going to lose that $20 out of their paycheck? What's going on down there in Washington?
It might be more than that.
Well, for very modest people with very modest means, very small income people.
Well, it's really simple. I mean, they would rather balance the budget on the backs of the middle class than to have the rich people pay anything extra. And this is what it all boils down to. I mean, it's really kind of simple, you know. But right now, what's going on is, you know, we spoke about awareness before, and that's really why I'm here. And to be quite honest with you, you know, it's almost like the Sleeping Beauty story. You know, they should have never woke me up. You know, I mean, you know,
okay.
I mean, because really, what happened is I install central vacs for a living. I drill holes, I run pipe, I make people happy. The problem is, most of my business is new construction.
Yeah, people don't generally retrofit houses for... I'm a realtor, so I know these things a little bit.
Okay, it can be done, but I mean...
Not easy.
The lion's share of my work is new construction.
Yeah.
The problem is there's not much construction being done right now. And, you know, as a matter of fact, I had to go back to pulling permits, building permits, which is what I did 20 years ago when I started the business.
Yeah.
You know, and I would go around and visit the builders and everything. The problem is there's very few permits to pull.
Right.
So, I mean, it got to the point where I'm scratching my head and I'm saying, what the hell is going on? Why is there such a problem? Why isn't the money circulating? And as I started to look, the stuff that I came upon, I said, this, like with the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing I ever knew about money was I never made enough of it. But I mean, I was healthy, I'm out there.
Yep.
I make, you know what I mean?
Working hard, making a living. That's the American dream.
Exactly, until everything dried up. And then I started to look, what's going on with the money? And I tell you, what I found out about the Federal Reserve just made me crazy. And I always thought that the Federal Reserve was part of the federal government.
Really? Because the first word in Federal Reserve is federal?
Exactly.
Well, that would be a reasonable presumption that something that has the word federal in it would probably have something to do with the federal government.
Let me give you a God bless America moment.
Okay.
My sister, who works her butt off, she works for a fish dealer. And I like to call her the finger that connects, that you put on the bow, She's the finger that holds it all together.
Oh, okay.
But she's a hustler, and she also works at H&R Block.
Uh-huh.
And she's been doing H&R Block personal income tax for years. So I asked her, I said, Joanne, is the Federal Reserve part of the federal government?
Uh-huh.
She goes, of course it is. They couldn't call it federal if it wasn't part of the federal government. So I said to her, Joanne, is Federal Express part of the federal government? She goes, oh. And I said, see.
They're not? Of course they're not.
And I said, see, you're representing a company that's taking money from people to pay a tax that most people think has been levied in fairness, is just and appropriate, and is apportioned properly. But most people don't know. And that's the problem. But what bothers me is these guys go out of their way to deceive you, so that the thing is you won't ask questions.
Well, that's called advertising, I think, which the general purpose of advertising is to create a tone, create a perception that, let's just say, generally is about, at best, 50% accurate.
Okay, I can understand that, but this is what they've tried to do here, and especially with banking. They've taken what we consider our normal terms. Like, let's say we go to the bank, and we want to borrow the money.
Yeah.
So they're going to say, well, they're going to loan us the money.
Okay, now let's, for instance, in your case, when you started your business, I'm presuming that you needed to have a truck, you needed to have some supplies, you needed to have something to get started, some materials to get started, to do your work, so you could do your work, make money, go back, buy more supplies, pay back the bank for the original supplies that they loaned you the money for. Is that fairly accurate of what you did when you started? Or did you just have the money available?
No.
Without borrowing it?
Believe it or not, when I started this business, I used all the profit from the business to buy the tools of the business.
Okay.
I swear to God. When I first started the business, I remember laying in the basement, screwing in the pipe straps.
Okay,
and I said, after this job, I'll be able to buy a screw gun.
Oh, jeez. Well, that's... How many people start a business basically on a shoestring?
Well, that's it.
And they on a wing and a prayer. And if you know what you're doing and you do it well, you're going to be able to continue doing it and get better at it, get better quality tools.
There you go.
Eventually, maybe even hire somebody as an apprentice and create a job.
Yeah, well, there you go. Right now I'm trying to create a job for my son. But there's so little work.
Yeah.
I mean, if I work one day a week, that's a lot. And it's sad. And I mean, it's really sad. And the builders that I've worked with for years and years, some guys have called, Rich, hey, listen, we've had a nice association, nice relation. We're moving. We're pulling. We're heading to Florida. We're going to North Carolina. Who needs the aggravation? And who in their right mind is going to put up a spec house?
Nobody. I'll tell you, as a realtor, I'll tell you it just doesn't happen. You build the house when you have a buyer with an approved mortgage, basically.
And I tell you, most of my work now is all down in Greenwich, Westport. The old money.
Now, what happens to all the people? What happens to all the people that actually live down there that do your kind of work? Because obviously they've got higher overhead in terms of their own housing costs, their own living expenses, they're pretty much out of luck, aren't they? Because they've got some guy from Danbury that's hungry for work and going down and probably working for a little bit less than they can do it for.
See, that's one of the problems, because that's what I call fighting over the scraps. And you can't do that, because the thing is, you know, I had one guy, and we were in negotiation. And finally I gave him my best price. And he came back and he goes, Rich, you got to do better. And I said, I can't. So he gave me a price from another guy, and I said, you know, I can't buy the equipment for that. So anyway, guy calls me up about a week later. He says, Rich, they started. I don't think they know what they're doing. I said, listen, you made your bet, you know. I said, but I will do you a favor. I'll come down, and when they're done, I'll just check everything so that this way you don't end up with, I don't want to say, well, you don't end up with problems. All right? So anyway, I went down there, and I said, you got to be kidding me. I mean, you know, it's like a kid did it. And I'm saying, you know, this thing is destined to fail. But I said, you get what you pay for. You know?
Take me back. Let's all well and good. Take me back to the Federal Reserve. We know it's not federal. We know it's not a reserve, which a lot of people apparently also don't know. What people don't know also is that the Federal Reserve takes our taxpayer money, turns around, gives it to the banks, who lend it back to us at what bookies would call a vig.
Exactly.
They get a cut. They get a percentage out of something that they didn't pay for in the first place. They got it basically on loan for nothing, for whatever the prime rate is, which is essentially zero. Turn around and lend it back to us. And in cases like, you know, we've been out in front of a number of banks in Danbury, including Bank of America up on North Main Street. Bank of America in 2010 made exactly one commercial loan in the entire state of Connecticut.
That's
so.
I just want to show you something.
Okay.
I'm going to reach in, and I want to make sure I don't fall off the stage.
Okay, that'd be a good idea.
But, you know, I've been studying the Fed and money, and there's a bunch of things that I'd like to have people look at and go to. But what I've tried to do is I've tried to break this down so that the average person can understand exactly what's happening.
Okay, now all this is going to go up on the screen, so you can leave with me anything, and when I edit the show, I can put any of these bits of information into the show afterwards when I edit it.
Okay, so whatever's on this card, then we can.
So, folks, whatever's going to be on the screen, watch out for, because it's going to be there when you watch the show.
Okay, but there are 4 movies on this card. They're all on YouTube. They're all for free. And this is really what started me. And but just to try to break it down so that the average guy can understand it. Even though this money's in my possession, it really belongs to the Federal Reserve.
It probably says Federal Reserve Note on it, doesn't it?
Right on the front.
Federal Reserve Note.
Right. Now, the reason why that bill was printed, was made, is when the government needs to borrow money, what they do is they print bonds, savings bonds. You probably have some in your house, you know. People give them for confirmations, graduations, you know. All right? The lion's share of the savings bonds are bought by the Federal Reserve. The way they pay for those bonds is they print money. All right? So now, and you ain't pulling a fast one, give me that money back.
Wait a second. No, I thought it was your name on it under Secretary of the Treasury. It's Henry Paulson. And if you probably want to check and see.
All right.
Do a little research and find out who Henry Paulson is. So
this money was created as a debt. Okay? If there was no debt in the country, there'd be no money. A lot of people can't handle that. But anyway, so this money has to be paid back to the Federal Reserve. Now, I've used the money. I've benefited from the money,
Yep.
and I'll give it back to you. The only problem is when I go to give it back, what's missing?
Some interest that you've collected.
Interest.
That you've collected. And these are the major banks that are part of the Federal Reserve. Chase.
Wait.
Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Go ahead.
Yeah. So now, I have to pay this back with interest. But what's missing?
The interest that they've collected and held for themselves.
When they created the principal, they didn't create the interest. Where am I going to get the interest from? The only place I can get the interest from is to take out another loan. So now I take out another loan, which enables me
to pay back,
to close this, to pay this loan back, okay?
To the taxpayers.
I still owe this, but guess what? I have to pay this back with interest, and it doesn't exist. So now I have to borrow to retire this loan. And it's an endless cycle. And that's why do you think you get so many solicitations through the mail for credit cards? All they want to do is get you on the cycle.
Yep.
And think about it this way. Let's say we want to build a bridge. All right?
Okay.
Let's say the bridge costs $300 million.
Okay, which is probably reasonable.
In labor, materials. If it costs $300 million to build a bridge, why do we have to pay $600 million for it? Because we have to borrow the money.
And pay it back over a period of time. And everybody that has credit cards...
we have to pay it back at interest. Now, here's the problem.
Well, people that have credit cards and have revolving credit on any type of credit card know that ultimately they're going to end up paying back a substantial amount more than what they charged on the card.
Exactly. And that's understood. Okay? But now here's the one thing that people don't understand. The fact that we're a sovereign nation and the fact that we have Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, we can print our own money. Now, the question is...
That's when you say we can print our own money, you mean...
The United States
of America.
The
government representing us,
right.
we people.
Instead of the Federal Reserve printing the money, we could just make United States notes.
And I believe throughout America's history, there have been times when that was done.
Exactly. Lincoln did it. When after Lincoln got elected, he knew they were going to have the war. The Civil War was inevitable.
Yeah, that was a done deal because the southern states said, if this guy's elected, we're going to secede.
So now Lincoln went back to his buddies who helped him get elected on Wall Street, and he says, hey, I need to borrow money. Mr. President, we'll lend you as much money as you need. When he got back to Washington, he figured out, they're going to lend me this money at 36% interest. So what Lincoln did was, he created his own money. They're still in existence today. The greenbacks. That's why they're green on the back. So Lincoln created the greenbacks, and they weren't backed by gold or silver. The only thing was it would pay off a debt. Okay? Now, he paid the troops their salaries in greenbacks, and he paid for the supplies of the army in the greenbacks.
Okay.
And the greenbacks were readily available and easily exchangeable. And everybody loved the greenbacks. And they spent them into existence interest-free at no debt. But the bankers didn't like that.
I wonder why.
So, trying to get back to what I said initially.
Yes.
With the interest, with the way we're paying off the interest, in 2010, in interest payments only, which is also on this card, we paid $164 billion in interest only.
So that's money that we did not have use of, but we had to repay.
I apologize to everybody in advance. It's money we're pissing away. It's that simple.
And it's allowable on television, so go ahead.
Why are we borrowing money from a private corporation and paying that money back at interest when we could be printing the money ourselves and paying the interest to ourselves? Now, you're going to have a lot of people go, well, you can't do that because you're going to have hyperinflation. And yes, they're right. You will have inflation, but what you would do is the debt money that's in existence, what you want to do is you want to change the seal on the bill. You know, maybe we'll make the seal red. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the debt money that's in existence has to be extinguished. So just as years ago when the bank tellers would see a silver certificate come across, they'd take it and it goes in a separate
And
box.
I have seen silver certificates,
Okay? But this is primarily the problem. And the thing is, I never knew the government was borrowing money at interest. And like I said, we can virtually stop this tomorrow. It ain't going to be easy because the guys that have the golden goose ain't going to give it up.
And those are the people that run the Federal Reserve.
Exactly.
The board of the Federal Reserve.
And, you know, and these guys, hey, look, the Federal Reserve has been in existence since 1913, all right? They've had almost 100 years of making a vig on every dollar that's been created. Enough's enough. Fellas, the party's over.
Okay, now, as is the standard, not the gold standard or the silver standard, but the standard of progressive soup, we need to find solutions to problems. We've got about 5 minutes left. Let's start moving on to provide us, obviously it's not quite as simple as just saying no, or is it? Is it that simple?
It would be that simple. It would be, but once again, look at what you're up against. These guys ain't going to give away nothing. Look at all we had to go through to try to get Bank of America to rescind the $5 charge that they were going to put on the ATM cards when people, you know. So we put enough pressure on them, finally they caved. But, you know, these guys go out of their way. The only thing on their agenda is to maximize profits. And it gets to the point where it's not sustainable. You know what I mean? The planet's not big enough to sustain the way that we're conducting business. And I mean, just to show you, to try to pay this interest off, it's crazy. Do you know that years ago, in some of your older cultures, what they would do is they would have debt forgiveness because the interest had gotten up so high. Nobody could pay it off. So they said, okay, let's start all over again. And you know, you got to remember, what the Federal Reserve is doing, charging us virtually a vig on the money, that's usury. In medieval times, if you were caught, you know, being a usurer, you'd get excommunicated from the church. And the church was everything.
That sounds like that sort of fits under the title of the love of money, which what the Bible describes as being the root of all evil.
Yeah.
Not money, but the love of money.
The love, well.
And which I would imagine probably translates fairly well out, and not just in Hebrew or Aramaic or any of the older languages, probably translates out pretty closely to the word greed.
Yeah. And that's a shame, you know, because the thing is, there's plenty for everybody.
Now,
you know, there is.
The Federal Reserve, of course, is controlled by the major banks, and we could go down the list: Bank of America, Chase, you know, the rest of them, Wells Fargo, the rest of them. Those are the folks that are in charge of the Federal Reserve.
Well,
you got
to be careful there, because I don't know if that's necessarily true.
Okay.
I think the Federal Reserve is its own entity. And that is the central bank that helps funnel the money to the, you know what I mean? So the Federal Reserve is like the tip of the pyramid that funnels it down. So I think we have to be careful. I don't think the major banks are part of the Fed.
But who would be better qualified to sit on the Federal Reserve than people who know banking from being, as the term that we've come to be enamored of, banksters,
you know,
gangsters.
The other day I was watching somebody, and it was Fox, as a matter of fact, and they said, you know, the foxes are in charge of the chicken coop
house.
So, and I'm saying to myself, yeah, but you guys got it backwards. You know, I mean. And then, you know, with everything that they've conjured up, like these convertible derivatives and this stuff, these guys are so crazy. You know, they couldn't make money fast enough, so they had to invent other ways to make it.
Yep, derivatives as in differential calculus for those of us who've studied
but that's
applied mathematics a little bit,
Yeah, that's why if we try to keep it simple and just try to get people to understand that we're borrowing the money and paying it back in interest when we could borrow the money ourselves and spend it into existence. It's virtually what Rome did before Christ. They took the metal of the era, the common metals, the bronze and the tin, and they printed all these coins. And they spent it into existence. And the aqueducts got built, and the Colosseums. And how did it get built? Because the money was readily available and easily transferable. And the people, because they had the money, they didn't mind paying taxes. And the money came in droves.
And when people are making a lot of money, they generally, in America, at least history of America, they don't mind paying a little extra taxes.
When you have it,
until today. But we're going to have to break off there. We've run out of time. We'll have Rich back at another time and talk more about this because it's a very deep and wieldy subject. Lots to be talked about. This is Progressive Soup. I'm David Stevenson. Rich Frascone, Occupy Danbury, and Google that and find out about that. Thanks very much. Good night.
Oh, that's enough. Tell people, that's right. Google Occupy Danbury.
We'll do that. Okay. We told you.
And we'll put the card up so you see the movies.
Okay. That'll all be up when I edit it. Okay. Good night.
Good night.
Okay.